So Rhino got an Heirloom skin recently, and in preparation for that I decided to revisit my Rhino build and update it with some of the newer arcanes from the 1999 update. I will in this video go over an early game build and a few endgame builds using new arcane truculence. In the next mainline update in March, EE will be lowering Rhino's blueprint timer from 72 hours down to 24, since it's one of the first frames you can get your hands on and the one I always recommend to newer players, and with the craft changes it's going to be even easier to get your hands on. Rhino also got a cosmetic change, where in the auxiliary slot near attachments you can now change how the iron skin is going to look. This is a great change since normally his iron skin will completely override your fashion with whatever cut you have in your accents. And as we all know, fashion is the true endgame. Before we go over the builds, I'll start by taking a look at his abilities and augments. His first ability, Rhino Charge, lets you charge enemies, sending them flying. This ability doesn't do any notable damage. The augment for this ability is called Ironclad Charge, which allows you to gain armor based on the amount of enemies you hit. Armor increase from this augment scales with your power strength. His second ability and most iconic, Iron Skin, which allows you to gain overguard with scaling with your armor and power strength. This ability is your key to survive and stay alive on Rhino. The ability scales best with armor, since armor scaling is easier to accomplish than high power strength. The augment for his second ability is called Iron Shrapnel. This augment allows you to detonate your iron skin to damage nearby enemies. I would personally not run this augment, but it adds good utility since you can recast your 2 if it gets too low. His third ability, Roar, is one of the most commonly used abilities and also Rhino's Helmet subsume. This is one of the best damage buffing abilities in the game and has too many implications and ways to calculate their damage increase for me to go over in this video, so if you want to know more about this, I would highly recommend looking up a video from another Warframe content creator called the Engineer that is called Is Roar Always Better Than Eclipse? This is for the people who have unlocked the helmet and wondering what damage buff to go for comparing Roar and the other damage buff from Mirage, Eclipse. The augment for this ability is called Piercing Roar. It gives your ability more damage and the ability to knock down enemies while dealing puncture damage. His fourth and final ability is Rhino Stomp, which causes Rhino to stomp on the ground, knocking enemies up and slowing them heavily up to 97.5% when the ability is max rank. This slow also works on boss-like enemies such as Kuva Liches, Sisters of Pavos, and most importantly, Steel Path Acolytes. The augment for this ability is called Reinforcing Stomp, which allows you to regain a portion of your iron skin for each enemy hit. The augment is in my opinion one of the better augments that he has if you're running especially endless missions or otherwise long missions that require you to stay alive for longer periods of time. Now that I've gone over how his ability works and what each of their augments are, I'll now be showing the builds that I made for him. Let's start by looking at an early game build I would recommend to any newer player who got their hands on Rhino. It uses Vitality and Fiber, which don't need to be max rank, but it would make the build a bit better. After that, I would recommend using Flow for more energy, Streamline for cheaper abilities, Continuity for extra duration on your Roar, Stretch for bigger AoE on your Stomp, and Intensify for extra Iron Skin Overguard, as well as a bigger damage buff from Roar. The Aura can be whatever you have access to. This build will get you through all of the regular star chart with no major issues and allow you to get access to some of the better mods that I'll be showing in my late game builds. I'll start by going over the first build that I would recommend for shorter missions such as Capture, Exterminate, Mobile Defense, and so on. I'll be using the Helmet ability Parasitic Armor that converts shields into armor. In this build I run Primary Direction and Boreal's Hatred for extra shields and a bit of efficiency. Then I run Blind Rage and Intensify and Molt Vigor for power strength increases. I then run a bit of range with Cunning Drift and Archon Stretch. And at the end I have Prime Flow for extra energy max and the 2 stables in both builds, Reinforcing Stomp and Arcane Truculence. This allows you to get a good amount of iron skin at the start of a mission and keep it up during the length of your mission. Archon shards I use in this setup is 2 regular yellows for casting speed and 3 Tauforge blues for shields. Now let's go over the other build that I made for Rhino. This build is more focused on armor stacking and gives you higher overguard values, which makes it perfect for longer missions such as relic missions or other type of endurance. The build is essentially the same, but I've changed out the shield mods for steel fiber and armored agility to buff my armor values. I also changed out intensify for the augment ironclad charge to buff the armor values even higher. This allows you to get upwards of 200,000 overguard, which is more than enough for longer missions. And then on top of that, the only other changes I made is to swap out the 3 Tauforge Blues from shield to armor, and then I added Arcane Energize instead of Molt Vigor for extra energy efficiency. Now, any potential changes that you might want to make to the build that I would recommend would maybe swap out Blind Rage for Transient Fortitude, which would help with your energy economy but lose you a bit of duration. You can also swap out Archon Stretch for the regular one if you don't run a companion that can proc the passive of the mod that gives you a tiny bit of extra energy regen. These are the builds that I cooked up while taking into account the new arcanes that we got from the 1999 update. The builds have been made around Arcane Truculence, which allows you to viral prime enemies without the need to have a companion to do it for you. I'll personally still be messing around with this setup and might do update builds in the future if anything were to change with my current build. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to drop a like, and if you want to stay updated on future videos, then remember to subscribe to the channel to get notified by any future uploads. I hope you'll give these builds a try, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. See ya!